Hello students, welcome to my educational channel EasyEd. In today's video, we will discuss about classification of kingdom fungi. In our last video, we have discussed general characteristics of fungi. Now classification. Kingdom fungi has been classified on three bases. They were morphology of mycelium, mode of spore formation, and fruiting bodies. On these three bases, fungi was classified into five main classes. They were Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes, and Deuteromycetes. These all names may be sound difficult to you, but please learn it because all of these terminologies are very important and you have to use it everywhere. So what are the five classes of fungi? Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes, and Deuteromycetes. There are keywords in every terminology. For your easy learning, you can make it yourself. See, mycetes. Mycetes word, wherever it occurs, this refers to fungi. Okay, so wherever you will read mycetes, that means it is talking about fungi. Now all these classes you have to study separately. So first we will take Phycomycetes. General characters of Phycomycetes. They are Phycomycetes. Members of class Phycomycetes are aquatic in nature. They are found in aquatic places, in water bodies and on decaying wood, and as obligate parasites on plants. When they get moist and damp conditions, they grow on decaying wood, and otherwise means they are free living as aquatic as on decaying wood, and they are also parasites on plants. And which kind of parasites? Obligate parasites means they are total parasites on plants. Now, second character, their mycelium is aseptate and cynocytic. Remember in the last class we have studied how different types of means two types of mycelium are there in fungi, septate and aseptate. So, aseptate mycelium is cynocytic means it shows multinuclear condition. So, Phycomycetes members show which kind of mycelium? Aseptate and cynocytic. Now something about their reproduction. In Phycomycetes, asexual reproduction is by zoospores or aplanospores. Two kinds of spores are produced for asexual reproduction. One is motile and other is non-motile. Motile spores are called as zoospores and non-motile spores are called as aplanospores. Learn all these names. They will be asked in questions. So, how are the spores motile? Spores are motile due to the presence of flagella. So, when members of Phycomycetes undergo asexual reproduction, it is by two kinds of spores, zoospores and aplanospores. Zoospores are motile and aplanospores are non-motile. And which kinds of spores are they? These spores are endogenous. Remember again we discussed in last video what are endogenous spores, which are produced inside the fruiting body. Okay, so spores are endogenous, produced inside the sporangium. What is a sporangium now? Sporangium is the spore bearing body. All these things we have is discussed in our last video of general characteristics. Those who have not watched that video can go to my YouTube channel and watch that video there, because for further better understanding you have to go through the last video, which is the introductory video about fungi. All these things, spores and types of reproduction, etc. We have discussed it there. Now, next character of phycomycetes is that their sexual reproduction involves gametic fusion. So, gametic fusion means fusion of two gametes. It is understood that whenever there is sexual reproduction, there will be fusion of gametes. Now, these gametes in phycomycetes may be of three types. Listen carefully, it is important. These gametes produced in phycomycetes are of three types. What are they? They may be isogamous, anisogamous, and oogamous. There are three kinds of gametes produced in fungi phycomycetes. Which are they? Isogamous, anisogamous, and oogamous. Now, what are they? Listen carefully. When the two gametes are morphologically similar, you understand the meaning of morphology, external structure. So, when two gametes are equally identical, similar in their structure, that means when they are morphologically similar, that means similar in size and shape, such kind of gametes are called as isogamous gametes. When two gametes are morphologically dissimilar, one may be big, one may be small, such kind of gamete is called as anisogamous. And the third type is oogamous. It is also anisogamous. One may be big, one may be small. And the difference is that one will be motile and other will be non-motile. The big one will be motile and the smaller one will be motile and the bigger one will be non-motile. When these kinds of gametes are produced, which are anisogamous, and that too smaller one motile and bigger one non-motile, these gametes are called as oogamous. And again, how will be they motile? They will bear flagella. Okay, so sexual reproduction in phycomycetes involves gametic fusion, and gametes may be of three kinds: isogamous, which are morphologically similar, anisogamous, morphologically dissimilar, and oogamous, one motile and small and other non-motile and big. And as we have discussed in earlier video, what is the result of the fusion of gametes? In phycomycetes, the fusion of gametes results in zygospores. Okay? When two gametes, may be isogamous, anisogamous, or oogamous, they will fuse together, they will form what? That particular stage will be called as zygospore. Now see and understand the sexual cycle in phycomycetes. See, I will explain you with the help of this diagram. These are two gametes. They may be isogamous, they may be anisogamous, whatever they are. So these are two gametes. Gametic fusion will take place. These two gametes of compatible mating type will fuse with each other. Just now I told you, as a fusion of gametes, what is formed? Zygospore. As a result of fusion of gametes, the cell, the structure which is formed, the stage which is formed is known as zygospore. Okay? Gametes fuse together to form zygospore. In zygospore, meiosis takes place. Okay? Inside the zygospore, meiosis takes place, resulting in the formation of spores. See, spores have formed. And as they are formed inside, which kind of spores they are? Just now we have studied, they are endogenous spores. So, as a result of meiosis in zygospore, these spores are formed, and these spores, when mature and when they get favorable condition, they are liberated out, and each spore grows into a new mycelium. See, reproduction cycles are very important. The stages which are formed are also important. They are always asked in questions. What is the procedure which is taking place? What is the stage which is formed? All these things are being asked always in exams, in questions, in NEET also. All these stages, terminologies are very important. So, understood the cycle? This is sexual cycle of phycomycetes. Now, some examples you might have heard about: mucor, rhizopus, albugo. Mucor is a common fungi. Rhizopus, if you know it, bread mold. This is the very fungus which grows into your bread when it is kept for long time. So that is rhizopus, which is commonly known as bread mold. And albugo. Albugo is a parasitic fungi on mustard. Okay, albugo is a parasite. It is a parasitic fungi. Questions may be asked. What are the parasitic? Name some parasitic fungi. You can name it. So examples of phycomycetes: general, mucor, rhizopus, that is bread mold, albugo, which is parasite on mustard. Now second class of fungi is ascomycetes. Ascomycetes, general characters. Ascomycetes is commonly known as sac fungi. I will tell you later on why it is so called. It is known as sac fungi. Okay. Ascomycetes are mostly multicellular. Example, penicillium. Penicillium is a fungi of class Ascomycetes. They are mostly multicellular and they are rarely unicellular. We have discussed in characters, general characters also, that except yeast, fungi is multicellular. So it is rarely unicellular. Example, yeast, which belongs to genus Saccharomyces. You have to learn this all. I am repeating again and again. All these names you have to learn. Examples you have to learn for exams. So, Ascomycetes, members of Ascomycetes are rarely unicellular. Example, yeast, and mostly they are multicellular. Example, penicillium. Now, mode of nutrition of Ascomycetes. Ascomycetes, as you all know, all fungi are saprophytic. They are saprophytic, they are decomposers, they may be parasitic, or they may be coprophilous. This is a new term in mode of nutrition. Saprophytic, you all know, which feed on dead and decay matter. Decomposers, they decompose the organic matter. Parasites need a living host. And this new word, coprophilous. So what is coprophilous? Means they grow on dung. They feed on animal waste, dung. This kind of nutrition is called as coprophilous. Again, a new and important terminology for exam. Next character about their mycelium. Mycelium is branched and septate. In Phycomycetes, what we have studied? Mycelium is aseptate and cenocytic, means without septa and with multinuclear condition. Now here the mycelium is septate and it is branched. Now reproduction in Ascomycetes. Asexual reproduction in Ascomycetes is by conidia. Remember last class we have discussed the reproduction in fungi. What is that? Conidia. Remember last class? These are conidia. Spores formed. Which kind of spores they are? They are exogenous. So Ascomycetes undergo asexual reproduction by conidia, which are produced exogenously on a special mycelium called as conidiophore. See, the spore bearing body of conidia is called as conidiophore. All this I have explained in our last class. Conidiophore is the special mycelium which bears conidia, means it is the spore bearing body which bear conidia. Conidia are spores. And how is the cycle takes place? That too we have discussed. These conidia separate as individual spores, and then in turn each spore grows into a new mycelium. So this is the asexual cycle. Conidia on germination form their mycelium. Now sexual reproduction in ascomycetes is sexual reproduction in ascomycetes is by ascospores. Remember again, sexual reproduction we studied ascospores. Now which kind of spores they are? They are endogenous spores present in this sac-like structure which is called as ascus. This sac-like structure called as ascus, and because of this fungi is also called as sac fungi. Now understand its common name. So, sexual reproduction is by ascospores which are produced endogenously in a sac-like structure called ascus. Plural is asci. Okay, singular ascus, plural asci. And asci are arranged on different types of fruiting bodies called as ascocarps. See, the fruiting body, the special mycelium bearing ascus is known as ascocarp. Ascocarp bears ascus. Inside ascus, ascospores are produced. Okay. Now it is not mentioned in your NCERT, but ascomycetes members also undergo vegetative reproduction. That means vegetative reproduction is also seen in ascomycetes. And three kinds we have studied: fragmentation, fission and budding. All these three kinds is shown. And if you remember, you might have studied it somewhere, that yeast multiplies by budding. Yeast reproduces vegetatively by the process of budding. So vegetative reproduction is also seen in ascomycetes, means all three reproductions are there: vegetative, asexual and sexual. Vegetative by fragmentation, fission and budding, asexual by conidia and sexual by ascospores. Now examples of ascomycetes, if you have heard their name: Aspergillus, Claviceps and Neurospora. All these may sound new to you, but you have to learn them. Aspergillus is a fungi belonging to ascomycetes. Next, Claviceps, and the third one which is important in biochemical and genetic studies, that is Neurospora. Neurospora's importance is that this fungi is very much studied, worked out in biochemical and genetical studies or work. Some other examples: morels and truffles. Morels and truffles of ascomycetes are edible. Okay, so morels and truffles are edible fungi of class ascomycetes. Just in the starting, we have studied penicillium, multicellular fungi of ascomycetes. You know penicillium, it is used in making antibiotics. Antibiotics are made from penicillium. That means it has medicinal importance. And the importance of yeast, you all know, it is used for fermentation in making bread, beer, etc. Okay. Third class is now Basidiomycetes. Basidiomycetes, third class of fungi. Mycetes means fungi. Now, the members of Basidiomycetes, common members of Basidiomycetes are mushrooms. You all know what is mushroom. Common members are mushrooms, bracket fungi and puffballs. These are the common members of Basidiomycetes. And where do they grow? You might have seen mushroom growing, small mushroom growing on the trees, on the logs of wood. Commonly, wherever damp and moist conditions will be found, fungi will grow there. You have seen mushrooms, okay? So, where do they grow? Basidiomycetes fungi grow on in soil, on logs, means wooden logs, on tree stumps. You might have seen fungi growing there, and as parasites in plants. Some members of Basidiomycetes are parasitic in nature. They are parasites of plants. Examples: rust and smut. Rust we have discussed in last class. It causes wheat rust. Okay, and again smut is a disease. Smuts and rusts are parasitic fungi in plants. Now what about their mycelium? Mycelium is branched and septate. Again same character as we have seen as ascomycetes. Now reproduction. In Basidiomycetes, vegetative reproduction is by fragmentation. Asexual reproduction is absent. Okay, and what about sexual reproduction? Sex organs are absent. Now here's something important, you have to listen it carefully. Sex organs are absent. Then how does the sexual reproduction takes place? Sexual reproduction requires fusion of gametes. Remember, in our last class we have studied the sexual cycle, which involves plasmogamy. Plasmogamy means what? Fusion of protoplasm. Two gametes fuse and first plasmogamy takes place. Now what happens? As sex organs are absent, plasmogamy takes place in somatic cells. You all know what are somatic cells. Somatic cells are the vegetative cells of the body. Normally, sexual reproduction takes place by the fusion of gametes, and gametes are produced in the sex organs. But in Basidiomycetes, sex organs are absent, and so plasmogamy, that means fusion, takes place where? In the somatic cells. Okay? Two vegetative or somatic cells of different genotypes or strains, means of compatible mating type, fuse together. This results in plasmogamy. Remember, fusion of protoplasm. As a result of plasmogamy, dikaryon is produced. Remember sexual cycle in fungi in last class? Dikaryotic phase is seen. You remember N plus N, that is dikaryon. Now this dikaryon forms basidium. Basidium is the spore bearing body of Basidiomycetes, and therefore it is a basidium. It is a cup like structure on which spores are formed. Remember last class, see diagram, you will recognize it. Basidium, a cup like structure is formed. That dikaryon forms the basidium, and on this basidium spores are formed, which are called as basidiospores. They are exogenous spores formed on the basidium outside the fruiting body. Singular is basidium and plural is basidia. Okay, so dikaryon forms basidium. Okay, inside basidium karyogamy and meiosis takes place. Okay, inside basidium karyogamy and meiosis takes place. If you remember the cycle, sexual cycle, see, gametic fusion, plasmogamy taking place, but here in Basidiomycetes, they are taking place between the gametes from the somatic cells. Okay, as a result of plasmogamy, N plus N dikaryon is formed. Dikaryon forms zygote. Now basidium is formed. Karyogamy takes place, and inside the basidium meiosis takes place. One zygote forms 4 spores. Okay, same cycle is going on here. Basidium, inside basidium karyogamy, that means nuclear fusion will take place. After that zygote will be formed, then meiosis will take place. One zygote will form 4 cells, And these are what? These are spores, basidiospores. Each zygote forms 4 basidiospores. They are exogenous, and basidia are arranged. Basidia, that means plural, are arranged on fruiting bodies called as basidiocarps. See, special mycelium fruiting body of basidium are basidiocarps. So these in this way the sexual reproduction takes place. That means it takes place in the somatic cells, and the whole process is common. Plasmogamy takes place, dikaryon, n plus n condition is seen. Then basidium forms. Inside basidium, karyogamy and meiosis takes place, as a result of which basidiospores are formed, which are exogenous spores. Now examples of basidiomycetes: agaricus, that is common mushroom; Ustilago, just now I told you smut, it causes smut disease in plant; and Puccinia, which is a rust that causes rust disease in wheat. Wheat rust is caused by Puccinia. Now fourth and last class of fungi is Deuteromycetes. Again you have to listen carefully. Deuteromycetes are called as imperfect fungi. Imperfect fungi, okay, or fungi imperfecti, okay. Now why they are called so, I will just now tell you. What about their mycelium? Their mycelium is again branched and septate. So in all these 4 classes, only in Phycomycetes we have studied mycelium is aseptate and cenocytic, and in all these 3 classes mycelium is branched and septate. Some members are saprophytes. Mode of nutrition. What? Some members are saprophytes or parasites, while a large number are decomposers and help in mineral cycle. Some members of Deuteromycetes are parasitic, some are saprophytic, but a large number of Deuteromycetes fungi is decomposer, which helps in mineral cycle. Now about reproduction. Vegetative reproduction is seen, and that is by fragmentation. Okay. Now asexual reproduction is by conidia. Just now we have studied in Ascomycetes also. Asexual reproduction is by conidia, exogenous spores borne on conidiophores. And sexual reproduction is absent. In Deuteromycetes, sexual reproduction is absent, and that is why they are called as imperfect fungi. Means fungi not showing the perfect phase. That means sexual phase, sexual stage is called as imperfect fungi, and they are kept in Deuteromycetes. Actually, it might have happened that fungi in which sexual reproduction was not known were kept under Deuteromycetes. Okay, those fungi in which sexual reproduction was not known were kept in Deuteromycetes class. Later on, when sexual reproduction was discovered, those fungi were removed from Deuteromycetes and shifted and kept in Ascomycetes or Basidiomycetes according to the spores they formed. Okay, exogenous spores formed, that were Basidiomycetes; endogenous spores formed, that were Ascomycetes. Okay, so those fungi which formed spores, sexual spores in their life cycle were shifted from Deuteromycetes to Ascomycetes or Basidiomycetes, and as the remaining which lacked the perfect stage, that is the sexual stage, were kept in Deuteromycetes. So some examples of Deuteromycetes are Alternaria, Coletrotricum and Trichoderma. These are the examples you have to learn. So now when we have studied all the classes of fungi, remember in the starting I told you the basis of classification of fungi. Remember, basis of classification was mycelium, morphology of mycelium, type of the spores they produced. Okay, what was the basis of classification of fungi? Mycelium, mode of spore formation, and fruiting bodies. These three were the bases. Now when you have learned, studied all the classes of fungi, just have a look at the classification in more understandable form. See how the fungi in which sexual reproduction were known were separated, and in which sexual reproduction were not known were separated. Means fungi were first grouped into two groups. What were they? In one, sexual reproduction was known, and in other, sexual reproduction was not known. Those in which sexual reproduction were not known were kept in Deuteromycetes. That formed class Deuteromycetes. And then those in which the sexual reproduction was known were again divided into two kinds. What were they? Mycelium, one in which mycelium was aseptate and other in which mycelium was septate. So first basis, what was that? Mode of spore formation, means reproduction. Now second basis they considered mycelium, morphology of mycelium. So those in which sexual reproduction were known was divided into two groups: aseptate mycelium, those having septate mycelium. Those with aseptate mycelium were named as phycomycetes, and those which were having septate mycelium on the basis of the spore formation were again divided into two, one forming ascus and forming endogenous spores was named as ascomycetes, and other forming basidium and exogenous spores were called as basidiomycetes. Now see, the three bases have been completed. What were they? Type of fruiting bodies, okay, on the basis of which ascomycetes and basidiomycetes were named. Morphology of mycelium, on the basis of which phycomycetes was separated from asco and basidiomycetes. And then the mode of reproduction, mode of spore formation, sexual are found and sexual absent. So finally we have five classes, sorry, four classes: Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes, and Deuteromycetes. Now that's all for today. Please like, share, and subscribe my channel. Thank you.